Hello, everyone. Welcome to this Freeform episode of the Mindful in Minutes podcast. So no meditation today. Instead, we are just chatting. And today it's a little extra different, a little different. I'm going to be answering your questions today. So some of the questions kind of get into this a little bit, but there's been a lot going on just like personally, and it put me a little bit behind. And so I did have every intention of having a different topic for a Freeform episode today. And I just was needed by my family a lot this last week, kind of the last 10 days or so. And so it didn't get finished. And so it's going to get finished at a later date. And I didn't want to not release anything. So I kind of did an AMA, ask me questions, I'll answer them live. And there's some really interesting questions that you guys have that I'm actually looking forward to answering. But yeah, this last week or so has been a big sign from the universe. And I'll always give you guys the real deal of what's going on. And I also want to share this and disclose this just because I think it's important to, I don't necessarily like the term I need to be real or whatever. But I think that in life, sometimes things just happen and we have to, in the moment, shift our priorities around and say, you know what? This thing that I really wanted to get done by this date didn't get done because I was needed elsewhere. I was needed by family, or I needed to take care of myself personally, or whatever it is. And that extends to me as well. And I think it's important that we as people honor that for ourselves. So we had a really interesting week or so. Just the last 6 weeks have been not necessarily interesting, but have been really busy. If you follow along on Instagram or things like that, I've been doing retreats and things, and I did 2 retreats within the span of a month, which usually I wouldn't do. But some of these things, because I'm currently pregnant right now, and Poppy, that's her in utero name, just like pork chop is. I think I said this the other day, but I've been getting this question a lot. Is pork chop's legal name pork chop? It's not, but just for privacy, that's his, his stage name. It was his in utero name, and now it's turned into his joke stage name. But Poppy is her in utero name. But anyways, with Poppy's arrival coming this fall, I just kind of expedited the timeline on some retreats and things like that to make sure that I could get another one in before, I take that hiatus or take maternity leave. And so it's been just May was incredibly busy. And the first half of June was incredibly busy. And then it was we got home because we did take a little sort of a baby moon, except we brought pork chop. So it was our last family vacation. And of course we went to my favorite place ever. We did go to Iceland. We ended up getting stranded there a little longer than we anticipated because of some flight difficulties, but we finally got back last week. And then last week the universe kind of had some, I'm still figuring out exactly what the universe wanted to remind me. But basically what happened is, both Queen Mila and pork chop on the same night ended up going to the ER for unrelated things. It wasn't nothing happened to both of them at the same time. Both of them are okay. But the reason that I share this is because, Mila in particular, Mila had this thing called bloat, which I don't know if you're familiar with it. Mila is a Newfoundland, so she's a really big dog. She's 120 pounds. And it's more common in large breeds, but my understanding is it can happen to any dog. So I shared this just for any dog owners, not to scare anyone. But the reason that Mila is okay is because we recognize the signs really quickly, and we could take her into an animal hospital really fast. So basically it's this thing where if a dog eats too fast, or they eat really fast and then go and exercise, or sometimes it's just kind of a fluke thing that happens, A dog's stomach can kind of like twist on itself, and then like gas and stuff can kind of back up into the stomach, and they get really sick really fast, and it can kill a dog within like a couple of hours. So it's really time sensitive and really serious when it happens. And it's one of those things that having a large breed dog, we always knew was like something that could happen, but you never think it's going to happen to like your dog, right? So anyways, again, Mila's okay. This is not, if she wasn't okay, you better believe I would have started this episode with like, a trigger warning. But she is okay. But basically she just was fine and ate her dinner. And then like 30 minutes later, she started asking to go outside a lot. She was obviously like really nervous. She was eating grass, like she had an upset stomach. And then she started kind of like dry heaving. And again, I'm only sharing this just to help educate because I firmly believe that the only reason Mila is still here is because we knew what to look for and had heard of this before. And so we kind of saw the warning signs really fast. So I share this just if this could help like any other dog out there, even if it's like just one or any dog owner. And then she just started acting like really nervous, like whimpering. She was obviously like in pain. She was, trying to throw up and couldn't, was sitting down, standing up, circling, like just obviously. And Mila's demeanor is always she's a very laid back girl. She's sassy, but like she is super, super laid back. And so this was so unlike her. And both my husband and I knew right away that there's something wrong with her, and it happened so fast. We knew it was something serious. So we took her into the dog ER, and it was a really stressful night. I was with her. My husband was back home with pork chop. And we didn't know what was going to happen, if she was going to be okay. She had to get emergency surgery, and we weren't going to know what was going to happen until she had the surgery. But thankfully, everything was okay, and she was okay. And it just was like one of those things that it was just like, I don't know. I just remember thinking, and it's interesting, and maybe I can just get to this question now, because it's interesting because someone that I know, I owe this person a meeting, a catch up. So if you're listening, I know I owe you like a DM. But I did get a question on any thoughts on how to cope with our aging fur babies, because we have dogs that are like us, similar age, or that are getting a little bit older. And the thing that was coming up to me, or I don't know, I was like a hot mess, you guys. Like, you all know that Mila is like my girl, my fur baby, my little furry angel. Like, she's been with me through just so much. Been with us, but she like with every move when I didn't have friends, and I had her. Anyways, we just like don't deserve dogs. But something that kept coming up for me in those moments, there was a couple of things that came up. One is I remember really thinking like, is this it? Like, after everything like you've given me and everything we've done together, like this is going to be like how it ends, just some random fluke because for whatever reason your food didn't go down right. Now your stomach is twisted. And I remember just kind of having this shock of like, everything was fine. And now we're here, rushing you into like emergency surgery. And so there's definitely that. And there's also just this reminder of like how important and fleeting life is. And it sounds cliche, but it really was. Like, I think ever since like pork chop came around, and now that I'm pregnant with Poppy too, like sometimes it's easy for me to not get distracted, but like there's just more kids that need me now as opposed to like just Mila. And so just like, I don't know, just this like a lot of gratitude for her. And this kind of is my answer for the question about aging fur babies. But like there was that shock and that just like, oh my gosh, like, I can't believe this is happening. Like an hour ago, everything was just fine. We were just, hanging out, watching Toy Story, and Mila was, eating her kibbles. But I had this sense of like gratitude, and something that a student told me a long, long time ago. This was when I had my studio. So this would have been like, I don't know, how long was that now? Like 6 years ago, 7 years ago, 5 years ago? I don't know. My brain's not as fresh as it used to be, I swear. But and she had told me about basically this book that she read. I think it's called The Holy Man. She actually gave me a copy of it. And there is something, and I actually haven't read the book. I feel like it's a very small book. And it's something that I felt like I have, and I'll open it when I need it, if that makes sense. But I know there's something in the book, because she told me, it's always stuck with me, where there's like a part of this book, this story, and someone has lost someone close to them, and basically, why did they take this person? And the universe or God or someone says, basically, it was time to give him back. And that really helped her with her grief and her loss. And something that ever since she told me that, I've kind of been thinking about that, because this is something that we learn in kind of meditation. Also, like Patanjali kind of talks about this. But basically everything in life is on loan to us. So, nothing is like truly ours, like permanently truly ours. It's all kind of, there's impermanence when it comes to life. And something that I was thinking about, especially in, these moments with Mila and not knowing what was going to happen, it's just, I've always known at some point with everyone and everything. I mean, at some point in life, I'll have to give her back and, give her back to, so I personally like to think that Mila is, I call her a fur angel, but I do truly think that like she is like this angel on earth, at least in my life. She is. So at some point she'll have to go back and join like her angel friends. And I like to think they think she's one of the best and the brightest. But this idea of like everything's on loan. And so what a special, beautiful experience to be given her for, such a long amount of time. And now we've been blessed with even more time with her because she's, fine and everything was okay. And what could have been really bad wasn't bad. So there's that question. But that's kind of how I think about it, is like, what a beautiful gift to have her in my life and to continue to have her in my life. And that even if I know one day I'll have to give her back, that it's a really beautiful, special thing for every day that we get to be together. So I don't know if that helps or not. Also, wow, like what different content for a Mindful Minutes episode. Like, whoa, this took a left turn. This is what happens. You guys, you ask me questions, I'll answer them. But that happened, and that was, and I was a mess, but also like the pregnancy hormones and everything. It was a lot. But so I'd come back home, because she was in surgeries. I said, go home, we'll call you, whatever, that thing. And we had just gotten a phone call, maybe 30 minutes. It was like late at night, saying that Mila was going to be okay. And then, my husband and I were like, oh, thank God, this like relief. She's going to be okay. She has to stay in the hospital for a little bit. And then I kid you not, 30 minutes later after that phone call, Pork Chop wakes up, and he woke up and I heard him on the monitor. And I don't share like too many details of like his personal life, but he woke up and he had croup, which like if you're not familiar with it, I didn't really know what it was until all of a sudden like my kid had it. But he just made this really weird kind of like barking, like honking cough. Like his cough sounded really weird, and he'd cough and then kind of like gasp for air. And it was one of those things. And I think part of what the universe was teaching me, because this happened on the same night, and I was like, oh my gosh, what happened? Do I need to like do like an exorcism of my house or something? Like, what is happening today? I don't know what is in retrograde, what's happening. And again, everyone's fine. But I immediately knew. I heard him make that sound on the monitor for like literally a nanosecond. And I just knew something was wrong. And so I think the universe was really reaffirming like to trust my gut, because in both of these instances, they ended up being really time sensitive, like emergent things. And I think sometimes too, especially with like health stuff or our kids or our pets or things like that, we can kind of second guess ourselves. Be like, I don't know, am I making a big deal of it? Is it really this? Like, I think the universe was reminding me just to, always trust my gut. For whatever reason, I really needed a reminder that day, and I got it. And thankfully my husband was there, and he was able to listen to Pork Chop's lungs for like a nanosecond, and then immediately knew there was a problem. We had to go to the hospital for him, and then he was okay. Croup is just like an inflammation of the airways, so you can get that inflammation from like anything, like a cold, or usually when kids are a little bit older, they grow out of it. And basically once they like get the airways open, which isn't like a complex process, he just kind of like takes the medicine, and then it's called like a nebulizer, but basically like you kind of put this like little like oxygen mask on kind of and like breathe with that solution. And then within like a few hours, he was better. And then we were going home and I was just like, oh my gosh, what's happening? So anyway, so that's what's been going on in life. And then we had a lot going on. Once a year, there's a very small Yoga for You team that I love deeply, and they're so great and so wonderful. And I try to like once a year do something like special for them just so that they know like how much I appreciate the hard work that they're doing. And so this year what I did was we went to the Eras tour, the Taylor Swift tour this weekend, which was like amazing. And I feel so grateful. And I don't know how I somehow came out on top on like the Hunger Games of Ticketmaster battles, but I did. So we did that, which was like so fun and so special. And that was like our annual kind of like team building thing. And yeah, and then by Monday, my body had told me that the stress of everything with fur babies, toddlers, team building, all of that, my body said enough is enough. And then, yeah, I basically was, my body was not happy and I was having lots of contractions and things like that. And again, everyone's fine. Poppy's fine. But then I had to take a few days off because my body was saying absolutely not. You need to like stop immediately or, something's up. So anyways, that's what's been going on with me, which is my long answer as to why, I don't have like a meditation topic or deep dive for you guys. But again, I share these things, one, just to be like honest and transparent, just like generally with like what's going on, but also the thing with like Mila and stuff like that, like really if that could, I don't know if either of those experiences with any of those three things, whether it be, your dog, your toddler, or if you're pregnant and like you just have to trust your gut every single time and like listen to your gut and just know if something doesn't feel right, like it's not right, and like trust that. And then also like sometimes we just have to put other stuff on the back burner to take care of ourselves or to take care of other members of our family or just to, reset or whatever it is. And, that's hard. I think that's hard to do sometimes, but it's like, it's very important. So that's just like personally what we've been, working with over here and in my tiny little closet and outside of my tiny little closet. But I think everyone is rebounding. Mila's doing like fantastic. She's so spunky. It's been like a little over a week now since this happened. She's so spunky that like now we have to really kind of keep her calm because she's obviously still recovering from like major abdominal surgery. Pork chop is, he's just being a little piece of work like he always is. So he's doing fine. I took a couple of days just really not like complete bed rest, but very, very, very mellow. And now Poppy is doing better. So anyways, that's what leads me to, I've already talked for like 20 minutes, but that's what leads me to that. Also my thoughts on aging fur babies. And it was interesting. No one's ever asked me that question ever before. And then, the week that I had to kind of look at that square in the eye, I get a question about that. But I don't know. I don't know if that idea of like everything is kind of on loan to you and that, and you're on loan like to others and that there is an impermanence of life, but also like how beautiful every day that like you do get to be together. I don't know if that resonates with anyone else, but that has personally been giving me comfort, or at least I guess giving me, what's the right word? Comfort isn't the right word. I don't know, giving me just like an answer in a way. But so there's that. So there's that question. I have a few others. So one is, when are you coming back to Ireland/Europe? I think I've talked about this before, but I'm happy to talk about it again. I don't have any solid plans to do it. Another question, these are related. Another question that I got was, how is this second pregnancy compared to the first? That's from a listener who's, currently pregnant with their second and was like, oh, how is it, different? And this pregnancy has been really different. And I promise I'll get back to the Europe question. They're related. I felt like my first pregnancy, Granted, it was my first. It also was like a pandemic baby. So everything was just like different. So I found out I was pregnant with pork chop March of 2020. And so everything was just like different. There are a lot of different things, different circumstances, things like that. But I felt that pregnancy was a lot harder mentally and emotionally, where I felt that this pregnancy, I'm in a much better place, like mentally and emotionally, but physically it's been so much harder. And I think it's because one, pork chop he is like crazy, love him to death, but he is just like not on planet Earth sometimes. And then during a pandemic pregnancy, like I wasn't really, so I didn't have a toddler to chase after. And also like I wasn't going anywhere. I wasn't doing anything. So I never really learned like what my physical limitations, and I imagine this is different for like every person, every body. I never learned like what my limitations were. So I've been finding that I'm just, I don't know, it's just physically demanding so much more, and that my body just physically isn't able to quite do what, I had always, not what I'd hoped it would do, but I get really worn out really fast. And so the retreats and, even fun things like team building, and it's wearing me out a lot faster than I anticipated. But I never learned that the first time because I like basically didn't leave my house for like an entire pregnancy. So with that, there's some things that I've also been doing differently this pregnancy. So the two pregnancies have felt very different. However, I'm also doing some things differently this time that I think is really contributing to me feeling better mentally and emotionally. One, which is this comes back to like retreats and coming back to Europe and things like that. I am not committing myself to anything big until I am able to live life for a little bit as a parent to two, and to see what that is like, and then make a decision based on the information that I have. So when I was pregnant with pork chop, I felt very much like, oh, like at 8 weeks or at 12 weeks, like I'll be ready to dive in. And I just didn't know. I'd never done it before. I had no idea how I was going to feel. And this is where kind of having this pandemic pregnancy was a little bit of a blessing in disguise for this, is that I think I would have overcommitted myself way too early to things because I just didn't know how long I was going to need to heal, or like how long I would need or want before I really kind of was diving headfirst into new things or big things like retreats. So something that I'm doing differently this time is I'm not committing myself to anything big or new that hasn't been, worked on or mostly completed before Poppy is here. I'm not going to do that until I get a feel for what it's like to be a mother of two. And then I'm going to take that information and that experience and then make decisions based on that information. So that includes retreats and things like that. And a lot of you guessed it. As soon as I said I was going to take a retreat hiatus, everyone, I think, kind of just assumed that like I was pregnant. And like I was. I just, I didn't share it for a while. But I know how hard it is to leave one child for a retreat. So I just don't know how I'm going to feel about it. So I'm not going to commit myself to anything until I can figure out what it's like, and then be true and honest with myself about what that experience is like, and then make those decisions. If I had to make a decision now, I can't give any kind of a timeline. However, I would be surprised if I was like, I'm not doing retreats anymore. That would surprise me. But again, I'm not committing myself like one way or another at the moment. But I just love retreats so much. So it would be a surprise to me if I just like didn't do them. However, I do anticipate taking like at least like a year-ish from now, because like Poppy's not even coming until fall, and it takes a while to kind of get everything going. And then the retreat process, I don't know if I've ever, maybe it's something I could talk about sometime, because I think it's kind of interesting. But the actual retreat, like for example, at the beginning of May when I was in Portugal, that planning process, like the beginning of that Portugal retreat for me work-wise was probably at least like 9 or 10 months before that. So even if I feel ready to start working on retreats again, the actual then retreat itself will then be like much farther out, because like the planning process and all of that just takes quite a while. So I was just in Europe technically like a week or so ago, but professionally, I don't have an answer for when I'll be back to Ireland or Europe. I do have my eye on some places forward. I mean, if I could wave my magic wand, I'd love to do a retreat in Scotland. Scotland's a place that's really special to my heart. I love Ireland. I would definitely love to revisit that. There's also parts of like Scandinavia that could be cool. There's a lot of places that are definitely on my radar. But that's basically the plan, is I'm going to wait and see, and then I'm going to decide how I feel, because I think it's important that for me, and I share this with you in case this resonates with anyone else, but it is okay to change your mind, and it's okay to pivot. Not that I'm planning on pivoting away from retreats, but I feel absolutely fine with saying, I don't know how I'm going to feel about that in X amount of time, so I'm going to wait and see. And giving myself permission that if my answer changes or how I feel about something changes, that's okay. And that I'm going to honor what feels right for me in those moments. Something else that I'm doing differently this pregnancy than I did the first. One thing that I, just for like, again, my mental, emotional well-being, and I didn't know this was an option with my first one. They told me at the very end I could do this. But just with like different changes in my body, and, they do focus like on weight a lot during pregnancy. But something that I've just started doing is when I go in for my appointments, I stand backwards on the scale and I just say, like, if you could just write down the number and not say it out loud, I'd appreciate it. And I just had a really open conversation with my doctor and just said, like, you know what, just if you ever feel like it's a concern, we can talk about it. Otherwise, can we just not talk about this number ever? And she was like, yeah, that's no problem. And I was like, okay, great. And then we just don't talk about it. And I know that if it's ever an issue and like medically we need to talk about it, we will. But that was something that I didn't know was even I didn't know that was a thing I could advocate for. So I didn't even know that I could go into my doctor and say, hey, you know what? Like, this is actually kind of triggering to me, or seeing this number or talking about this is not really serving my mental and emotional health. Can we just not do that? And they actually brought it up towards the end of my first pregnancy when I had kind of expressed that, this was a thing I was struggling with. And I didn't even know that I could ask for that. And so the reason that I share that, I just feel like I'm sharing all these things, like in case it could, help someone. But truly, if something is upsetting and triggering to you in terms of like healthcare, I think like bring it up and ask about it, because I have found so much more peace this second time around with just being like, you know what, I'm just going to try to listen to my body and give it what it needs. And then whatever happens with that is what happens with that. And like, that's okay. That's a part of the process. And it's brought me a lot more peace the second time around. So that I'm doing differently. And I'm also trying to personally protect my peace a little bit more. So I'm trying to be softer with myself. And, a lot of that has to be with like, you know what, if my body needs to rest, I need to prioritize that. Where I think the first time around, I had this I really internalized kind of this pressure to like, keep going. And granted, it was just different then too. And we were all, that time was just such a different time. And we were still like, my family was single income, things like that. It was just a completely different time than for me and, for most of us. But I had a lot of this internalized pressure to like not let pregnancy slow me down. And I've been doing a lot of reflecting even over the last, I guess, like if you include pregnancy, over 3 years at this point, but really doing a lot of introspection. And this is something that I sit with sometimes in meditation on, why I feel that need sometimes, or why I felt that need the first time, of like to not let pregnancy, quote, slow me down, and like what's really bad about that, like what's actually happening beneath the surface. And I feel like I've gotten a lot of clarity around that for me personally. And so I'm really trying to kind of put my well-being first more. And also just simple things like, if being around someone doesn't serve my greatest and highest good, or doesn't serve like my well-being, I'm just not, if I don't have to be around that person, I'm not going to. So just making these like small little tweaks, or even something like, you know what, I don't need to look at, a certain number on a scale right now. I'm just going to trust that my doctor, is that we're all just going to keep this baby healthy together without needing to fixate on that number. Like, I've been trying to do these little changes and swaps to kind of protect my peace a little bit more, and to honor where I'm at with less judgment. And that's just something that's brought me a lot of like peace internally. So that I'm doing differently. But physically this, I don't know if it's because I'm having a girl this time and I had a boy the first time, or if it's just a first thing versus a second thing, but it feels so different this time around. And again, every person is different with their pregnancy, but this question as to how is it the second time around and what am I doing differently? That's it. Let's see. Okay. Hello. Hello. And most of these come from Instagram, so I'm not saying like who they are necessarily because I don't know if people want me to just like call out like their handles. Hello. How do you deal with intrusive thoughts? This one, I love this question too. Intrusive thoughts is like, that's a baddie. So there's a few things that I do. One, with regular meditation, not that it'll necessarily cure all of your intrusive thoughts. However, it has been shown to really just kind of like, generally speaking, a regular meditation practice can overall reduce the amount of intrusive thoughts that we're having. So that's kind of, and I have found that to be helpful for myself personally too. So there's that, right? Like kind of doing these things that are more sort of like micro habits every day to get these longer term benefits. I also have been doing a lot of research kind of into intrusive thoughts, specifically how they rely to anxiety. As I was working on writing that second book that's going to come out this winter, that's all around like meditation and anxiety. So I do feel really confident in saying that a regular meditation practice, like overall long-term, can help with intrusive thoughts. And then short-term, so a few things. This is something that my therapist told me. I think I've shared it before, but maybe not. But she always has me do the, is it a truth or is it a thought exercise? So if something's really popping into my mind, I ask myself, is this a truth or is this a thought? And often it's a thought, rarely is it a truth, right? So, if I have a worrisome thought or some kind of an intrusive thought, I basically do this quick little like pause button. Is this a thought or is this a truth? So for example, I walk into a room and I feel like everyone's looking at me. A thought would be everyone is looking at me, they're judging me, they're wondering why I'm here, where a truth would be, oh, everyone, just noticed that I walked in, or, oh, maybe they're wondering who I am or something like that. Thoughts tend to be not always as nice. They tend to be much more like intrusive than actual truths. So playing the, is it a thought or is it a truth? And if it's a thought, then doing your best to then try to release that and say, okay, this is a thought, or like, I only... we only keep truths here. So that I find to be really helpful. Also, sometimes writing down the intrusive thoughts or saying it out loud to someone or to yourself, like seeing it written down or hearing yourself say it out loud, I think sometimes can take some of the weight off of it. Like it feels smaller when you either see it or you hear it out loud. That I have found to be helpful. Also, depending on like what the intrusive thought is, like, is there a mantra that you can work with that helps to alleviate what comes with that intrusive thought? So those are some things that I have found both long-term and short-term that can help with intrusive thoughts. A couple of people asked about what my favorite essential oils are, and I don't really use a lot of essential oils, and I want to set a boundary right now. If you are an essential oil person, if you sell essential oils, that is, I love that for you. Me saying I don't really do a lot of essential oils is not an invitation to DM me and email me and, sell me your essential oils or, get me into any kind of an essential oil MLM. So I'm just going to put that boundary right here now. It's just not, I don't use them a ton right now. And I feel fine about that. Moving on. So let's see here. Okay. A question here again from Instagram. Do you ever plan to increase the amount of Freeform episodes again? I miss them. I hate to break it to you, but I do not. So something that is really important to me, and for an entire year, I did a meditation every week and a Freeform episode every week just to play with it and see what it was like. And for me, it was too much, especially with the Freeform episodes, because there are a lot of like teaching and, and every podcaster works hard on their podcasting is a lot of work. So it's not to say that, mine takes all this work. However, I found that doing, because with writing the meditations is kind of this more of like a creative writing process. And then the freeform episodes are usually more of like a deep dive into a particular style or like an element that requires like a lot more research and things like that. And it just was too much to do, especially now that I've added the community mini at the beginning of each month. And then I also do exclusive Patreon content as well. So that ended up being, depending on the month, anywhere from 10 to 12 episodes per month, which was just too much. And I felt like I was running out of good ideas when I did it that frequently. And the last thing I want is to feel like the quality of what I'm sharing or the teaching that I'm doing or the meditations that I'm creating, that the quality begins to lack because I am trying to increase the quantity. So it was doable for that 1 year, but then when I really sat with it and reflected upon it, I realized that doing one every single week was too much. So I feel good about doing 2 a month, every other Wednesday. And what I'm working on right now, which is into the next question, haven't seen you in a while. I think they're talking about like not posting on social a lot. Haven't seen you in a while. What are you currently working on? So a lot of what I've been working on and it's like more behind the scenes stuff. So I definitely haven't been doing as much like social media stuff or like virtual retreats, things like that. Because again, I'm really trying to be more cognizant of what I can take on right now and what I can't, and honoring like how my family needs me and also how my own body needs me right now during this time that, I'm cooking good old Poppy. But the big projects that I've been working on, kind of behind the scenes stuff, is I've been working on creating the audiobook to go with the first book that's coming out. So Mindful in Minutes, a meditation guide for the modern family, is going to be available on Audible. I think you can pre-order that on Amazon. I think you can pre-order the book on Audible already. Obviously, the book itself is available for pre-order. I've been doing a lot of work around the book, like different podcast episodes, like being a guest, talking about, some of the things that are in the book, some different, like press stuff that makes me sound fancier than I actually am. But like things like that, like sharing a lot around the book, and kind of spreading the news that this is something that's coming up. So I've been doing a lot of that. But recording this audiobook, and I've done some audiobooks in the past, like sometimes people will hire me for like just a kind of one-off project to like narrate something because I have like the recording equipment and if they like the tone of my voice or whatever. But this is different working on this project. It's different because I'm working like with a producer and things like that. But it's also different because I'm reading the words that I wrote. And I always love when a book is read by the author because, and I love like audiobooks. I know some people think that's not really reading. I don't agree with that, but whatever. But I think when it's read by the author, it's like read in the way it was intended to be heard. Like it's like read in the way that it was written. And especially because this first book is like a really personal one. It is something that I've really been enjoying bringing to life, but it's also really time consuming and it's a lot of work. And it's been like a challenging but really fun process bringing this book that I created. Almost at this point I was working on it, like I was in later stages of creating it, like maybe almost a year ago at this point, and bringing it to life in a way like you guys are so used to hearing my voice, and I'm so used to sharing this stuff verbally. And so I've really been working on that. It's a way, longer process, kind of creating this like Audible level, like audiobook. But that's been really cool. So I've been working on that a lot. Obviously working on like keeping the train on the tracks personally and with, family and everything going on with all that. And then I've also been working on some things for the second book. It's basically done. There will be an audio component to that I can't talk about yet. It'll be different than like an audio on like Audible book. However, there's going to be a really cool element to the second book, the Warrant on Meditation and Anxiety, that I'm also working on now, because what I've really been shifting gears and focusing on now that I have, a few months still, in terms of my pregnancy, because we're manifesting that, Poppy stays in there. until it's time, until she's fully cooked. And, but I am working on maternity leave stuff. So especially with like podcasting and what I do, I don't intend to, like you won't notice a difference because, unless, and again, we're manifesting, this doesn't happen, but unless, Poppy comes like very, very, very early, I want to use the majority of the summer to write and record future episodes. So then whenever Poppy does come, that there won't be like a break in episodes or anything like that. I can just have them kind of ready to go, scheduled, and then I can take some time, healing, integrating things like that. But then you won't necessarily like see any difference in terms of like podcast episodes. So I've also been focusing then on some of the things that I continually do every week, like this, podcast, content on Patreon, work like meditation teacher training, office hours, those types of things, so that then I'll be able to create some space for me and my family to integrate after Poppy comes and kind of have everything sort of ready to go. Because with this show, it's just me. I don't have like a co-host or anything like that. So I'm kind of working ahead a little bit too and really planning out and working on like fall content while I'm also working on summer content in real time as well. So those are the things. I'm spending a lot of time in this little closet here working on different things. It's really fun. It's bringing me a lot of joy. I love creating meditations and podcast episodes and doing new different things. But it's also time consuming as well. So those are the big things that I think I've really been working on. And yeah, I think that's it. This summer, doing a few like local events if you're in the Twin Cities, doing some of those before I take a little break from that as well after Poppy comes. But yeah, that's what I've been working on. Let's see if there's any other questions. I don't think so. That's really it. I thought this was going to be this quick little like, answer a few questions, but it's kind of still regular length. So I appreciate you guys listening, getting caught up with me. I hope that you are doing well. There is going to be should we do a little spoiler alert? There is going to be a regular meditation on Sunday. Let's see, even before that, so we have the community mini coming up on the 1st. We have the Patreon subscriber bonus coming out on Patreon on the 2nd of July when you're listening to this. And then on Sunday, there's going to be a daily positivity meditation coming up. So I'm looking forward to that. And I hope that you have a beautiful day. And thanks for listening and being open to me mixing it up a little bit. I do have some really fun educational, right? Education is fun. Learning is fun. Science is cool. Coming up for Freeform episodes next month that I think you're really going to like. So that's that. I appreciate you. Otherwise, you know the drill. Share with your friends. Leave a 5-star review. All of those things really help. And I'm just grateful you're here. Okay, bye.